I'd like to start the Open Space Land Acquisition and Farmland Preservation Subcommittee of Tuesday, November 29th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Thank you. And calling to order. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of one of our prior meetings?
John.
Motion to approve.
No voting people. John Malero.
Yeah, yes.
John?
Yep.
Motion?
Yeah, there was, I'd like to propose a motion to approve the October 28th land acquisition meeting.
Thank you. All in favor, you and I? Yes, yay.
Aye.
Approved, minutes approved. We will have minutes from we had another meeting that was a walkthrough, an on-site walkthrough to see adjustments after further site work was done after the house was, the homestead house was taken down. And we will have those minutes available at our next Farmland meeting to approve and in the agenda packet for the public to read. Part of that walkthrough was to identify changes to the site layout that are occurring because of wetlands. And so it contributed to tonight's presentations in a small way, and we'll have our guests present some revised plans for our community farming area. Having said that, is there anybody from the public that would like to speak? Anybody online? Anybody in the council chambers? Seeing none, hearing none, no public comment. We're going to move on to item 4 on the agenda, Town Farm, Streska, Land Use Plan, Site Development and Remediation Plan Review, Yukon Plant Science and Landscape Architecture Team, and Zuvik Inc. Thank you. Hey, Chris, we just got through approving the minutes. That's good.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, committee. It's been 2 or 3 months since we last spoke. It's nice to see you again. I'm here, Natalie and I, and there are 2 representatives from Zuvik that are also here. I would like to give a kind of a general overview of what's been going on for the last 2 or 3 months, and then Zuvik can answer any questions in detail on their portion of the work, as I can too, after the brief overview. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's great. And I just have one quick question. You're not frustrated by the process at this point, or are you to some degree?
No.
Okay.
No, I think it's it's a lot of hard work. We've worked very hard together, coordinating. We both have different criteria that we're bringing to the table, and I think it's a better plan now since we've been doing the coordination.
Okay, I just didn't know if there was going to be something that maybe the committee needed to help with alleviating any hurdles. I mean, certainly we were surprised by the wetlands piece of it at our last walkthrough, but not, we were sufficiently satisfied that a plan could still be worked out. So, yes. But I just want to make sure that you're getting cooperation and all those good things. And
yeah, good coordination. I guess I could have more resources if you're offering that.
No, we're not.
You're not offering that. Okay, so my portion of the presentation has 4 parts and then questions at the end. The beginning is new information. We know we have new information with the wetlands, with the remediation, soil information, and the entry offset. So the entry road into the site, we changed the location of that, and that impacted the plan. Number 2 will be the impacts on the plan based on the new information, then showing a revised plan, a detail of the turnaround conceptual layout, and then the questions and answers. So this is the parcel in question, Route 160 in New Road. So this is the parcel we've been looking at in great detail. And this is the information we're working with, say, 2.5, 3 months ago. So this shows the arsenic soils in the brown, In this configuration, this shows the wetland. This is the town wetlands. This is the not the latest wetland, flagged wetlands, the earlier wetlands. And then this is where we were proposing the Yukon group. This is where we're proposing the entry road. So this is the information that we use to develop the plan, the current plan in front of you. The next slide is the updated information. So the wetland, the old wetland stopped about here. The new flagged wetland extends further toward the west. And the amount of arsenic soils is reduced. And again, Zuvik can talk in more detail about that. But I'll just go back to the earliest. I'd like to go back to the earliest slide, but I don't see a keyboard.
Oh, so,
Go on back.
they did.
Oh, this-
They changed it for you.
All right, they changed it. Thank you very much. All right, so again, now, if we just compare visually, we see that the wetlands just protruding a little bit in this location, and we can see the fair amount of square footage for the arsenic soils. If we could go to the next slide, please. And then this shows that, fewer soils, and we can see the wetlands are coming further down, further into the site.
Next question.
Yes, do you mind questions as we go, or?
I would prefer at the end, unless it's a clarification.
It is a clarification.
Yep.
Just on that, the wetlands on the slide, is that the actual wetland itself, or is that the upland, boundary of the upland review
That's the
area?
wetlands itself.
Okay.
Not the 100-foot regulated area, just the wetlands itself.
Thanks.
Okay, now this is the impacts of the current plan based on that new information. And just to remind you, this is the plan that we've been working with. Again, 160, new road. And the basic concept was we have a main road coming in here, aligning with the existing farm road. So we just have this strong one, axis coming through the site. Then we would have a left-hand turn here to connect to Route 160. And the feeling was that buses, emergency vehicles would come in here, would take a left-hand turn and exit onto 160. So we wouldn't have a turnaround within the site. We felt it was just a simpler plan doing it that way. So the barn, excuse me, the barn being in this location, parking behind the barn, and then the layout of all the fields. So that's just to remind you of what we're working with. And then here's the plan, and I've just highlighted three different aspects of it and why it's changed. One, at the entry road, we could not align the entry road with the existing farm road the way this is aligned because the feeling was we had to drop this entry road down further to the south to have a reasonable stacking distance from the stop line here to this entry road. So the town has 200-foot distance. We're about 180, so we had to drop that down a little bit further, which would give us an offset between this and the existing farm road. Secondly, and probably the biggest issue, well, a big issue, is in this area, when we went to grade it using town standards, we had steep grades here, over 8%, and or extensive fill to allow for a safe bus route. To get this down to 8% or even 4 or 5%, there was a tremendous amount of fill in here. So engineers and I, we worked on this in a very diligent fashion. We tried many different solutions, and we just couldn't really get something that we were all comfortable with. We also met with the engineering department in town. Planning and zoning had a representative there. Fire marshal or fire chief was there as well. So that looked like it needed to change. And thirdly, the wetlands. Right now, this is showing the wetlands as they were shown earlier. These are the community gardens that got geometric layout there that need to change. So that's the impacts based on the new information. Okay, click revised plan. So this is the revised plan, and the barn, so 160 on the top, new road here. The barn is pretty much in the same location. It's slightly different, but within 5 or 10 feet of the location we had earlier. This is the existing farm road. We still want to utilize that as the first plan showed. But because we had this offset, instead of coming in straight here and then taking a turn, we're just putting a curve in this road that would allow people to come up here, and then if they're going to go straight, they would just come this way. Because this road here was getting relatively steep, we view this as a potential secondary means of egress, but we've added a turnaround in this location. So this has a size so buses can come in, drop off at the barn, turn, and come out, as could emergency vehicles. This also has parking up along this edge, so we have about 10 to 11 cars parking at that edge. That's the major change between the two plans. We always had a demonstration field or garden here. That would remain. Again, this could be the engineering department felt this could be a little bit steeper if it's not being used every day for school buses, everyday use. If that has to be a little steeper, that would be okay. We still have the timeline walk that kind of separates some of the old foundations and the new barn. And also some people of the public were concerned with people sharing the road, so we have this walkway in this location. This is one of the better foundations that's still there. This is kind of the knob of a lot of the soil that needs remediation. And I think we potentially could have some demonstration gardens for some phytoremediation using plant materials, as well as other types of remediation that Zuvik will talk about. The community gardens, the shape of those have become a little funky. So it's about the same square footage, but the wetlands are pushing out here, but there's less wetlands in there. So the earlier plan, the wetlands, this was wetlands, and this wasn't wetlands, so we had that nice geometric shape. Now we have about the same square footage, but it is a different configuration. I think it's easily workable for community gardens. And the way things turned out, we have a larger area here for either potential farm fields or other uses there. Just because of how the geometry's worked out, we have a reasonable shape and square footage for additional uses here. If you recall, there is an existing farm road coming in now. It actually starts up here, and it comes in down here and comes across the stream on a soil bridge here with a pipe. And the feeling is we want to maintain that access, but instead of using this roadway, there's another roadway that starts up here and comes down this way. And we're recommending using that one because, number one, one, it doesn't divide this area, and two, it's a nice edge condition between the soil that needs to be remediated and the other type of soil. So there's a nice zoning or distinction between those different uses. This could be a pedestrian walkway that would connect with the timeline. The walkway would come down this way. And then this trail was the trail we were showing. The location has changed because the wetlands have changed, but the concept remains the same, that this walkway would come down here, come around to this point. This would be fine. From here on, it would have to be a boardwalk. So that was always considered to be a future potential aspect of the plan to bring that trail up through the wetlands there. So I think that's the major changes and issues. This, I just more or less just discussed this, but this shows the impacts, the positive improvements based on the plan. And what we're saying is, one, we have a safe drop-off, not drip-off. We have a safer drop-off here, a little more formal, safer drop-off here. We have this larger area here for potential different uses, farm fields, or multi-use area. We have this area for remediation of soils. That could also be demonstration. And then potentially there's a little more square footage here for the fields that potentially could be leased to farmers. But Zuvik could talk a little bit more. The earlier plan did show some soils up here that need remediation, so they could talk about that in more detail. And then just zooming in, and I think this might be part of your package. This is an enlargement of the entry road coming in off a new road, coming to this turnaround. We actually have a rain garden in the middle of this, so this would be depressed, so water would drain into that. We also have it's a natural low point here, so we have another rain garden here. Some fill here. As we know, a new road was filled artificially when it was built, so we have to make up this grade a little bit from here to there. This is 4%. This is all less than 5% all around the building, so we wouldn't have to have ramps or handrails. This would be the parking for 10 cars here, the building pad, the road coming in. This is the farm road that's connecting to the farm fields. This is the potential secondary access in that location. This is the cross-section. This is coming from Route 60 down the existing grade. We're potentially cutting a little bit here. This is the 4% drop-off there, filling there, so we're hoping there'll be close to a balance of cut and fill in these two locations. That shows the barn in that location. So that is my aspect of the presentation. John, would you like to talk about some of your information or have them ask questions?
Oh, why don't they ask questions?
Okay, all right, good. Okay. Could we go back to the grading plan, please? So that would, yeah, that one there. Beautiful. Thank you.
Counselor Duff, any questions?
So, thank you for presenting the revised materials. I think it's good to see that we have a lot of the same usage, just in a slightly different configuration. One of the things that I don't want to say it's not a concern in terms of an obstacle, but in looking at the overall plan in that lower field that we have kind of earmarked, I think it said potential uses could be multi-purpose, could be farm. There's a lot of public activity that would be surrounding that field, and we have had challenges in the past with the farmers who have had kind of public-facing pieces of land and need to maintain all the GAP principles and everything for healthy and safe food. That might be a little bit of a challenge, and given how much of that portion of the site is earmarked, I guess, for like agricultural use, it would be nice to see something like a great field or something that had more of a public relaxation, multi-use field component to it. That was one of my main takeaways. And then I know there had been some concern about the findings of the wetlands, but it looks like we still have some activities taking place in that area. It's just we can't do things like hardscaping and paving and other, like, building structures in that area. Is that kind of correct? In terms
Yes.
of what, okay.
Yeah, I think, I mean, in ways, it's kind of factual presentation. Historically, working in other towns, if there were farming activities within the 100-foot regulated area, historically, wetland commissions tend to support that use continuing. So we're not adding other different types of uses in there, but the farm road, existing farm road is right adjacent to the wetland. We thought it was some distance away, but it isn't. And that farm soil for the community gardens is adjacent to the wetland. So we're showing the continued use of that land with those two uses because it was agricultural.
And then just between what we had looked at before and what we're looking at now, any difference in the amount of impervious surface that we'd be adding as part of the design?
I didn't have time to do calculations. We're very close to what we had before. So again, we'll do those calculations, but we're very close.
Yeah, that's, I was thinking in terms of order of magnitude.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Counselor Malaro?
Again, thank you for this update. The one question comes to mind, and around the wetlands, I know there were some sizing adjustments. Over time, as we build for opportunities around that area, do we have a sense of additional major changes in the wetlands? Let's say if we have like major storms or anything like that, is that going to create any effects to what has been built, let's say, at that point in time? Is that something that we're factoring into these designs?
We all know there is global warming. I do a lot of work on sea level rise. To this point, we haven't made a lot of concessions to the idea of global warming inland wetlands. So personally, I see no problem with what we're doing, but I think Zuvik would like to talk about that as well.
You need to go. And just your name for the record.
Sure, Danville from Zuvik. The inland wetlands are defined by a soil type, actually, not by a moisture content. So the inland wetlands lines are not likely to move after we do our construction work, and the floodplain lines are sufficiently far from our work that should there be some change in those, some revision by FEMA, I don't think that we would be affected. Hope that helps.
Well, thank you. It does.
John, any more questions?
No, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sandy Kelly?
No, not right
No.
now.
Fran Whalen?
I just want to thank you guys for really putting a lot of thought into this and getting everything that you did. It looks great. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Brian Clems?
Yeah, thank you. This is, you guys done a tremendous amount of work. The only question I have is looking at this particular layout, is the parking area for 10 cars. With the community gardens that we're looking to put in,
Yes,
so would they park closer to the gardens, like on a roadway,
right.
or they'd have to park up here?
No, we would see them, the feeling was that this existing farm road, maybe the shoulders would be a little wider so people could parallel park on that road for the garden work. And if generally the committee is comfortable with this overall layout, I will spend a little more time, not on this piece right here, but the rest of the master plan. I didn't want to get into too much depth, because we had roads going into the community gardens, small like lanes. I didn't put those back in. I wanted to make sure people were comfortable with the general plan. I'll spend a little more time on that.
Excellent, thank you. That's all I had.
That's all you had? Sure. My one question was on the revised roadway through the major artery. I'm okay with that loop up. Continuing across, I understand that steep exit to 160 is still is still there, but
Yes.
for emergencies or whatever, or smaller vehicles. But I just thought, wouldn't it be logical to just run it down and go out that last curb cut all the way down on 160? Was that looked at, or that wasn't
I think the feeling was that will still be used for farmers.
for farmers? Still a farmer,
But
okay,
I think the feeling is we didn't want to pull everyone through the site,
gotcha.
so there would be that release valve.
Sure. And I want to thank you, too, for your patience and working with us on this. I think it looks great from my vantage point. I mean, showing us the potential that the site has, really, when we put our mind to it, I think, and I'm not surprised that we've had to adapt, and we really appreciate you doing that.
Good, thank you.
Staff?
Yeah. As far as the impervious surfaces, this whole area, the roadway, parking areas will not be paved. There'll be a process, so that isn't an issue. And as far as, the house is gone, the barns are gone, so it's probably less impervious surface than what was there. I have a question about the boardwalk.
Yes.
So the soils are not wet, right? Or are they wet in that area?
Yeah, that's right through wetland.
Yeah, I know,
So
but
wetland soils.
wetland soils.
Yes.
So you wouldn't necessarily have to build a boardwalk, really.
Historically, wetland commissions would be uncomfortable filling a little bit for a good trail if it wasn't elevated. But every town is different.
All right. Just a question there. And also the entrance driveway, you have designed it 24 feet in width.
That's correct.
Now, when we were meeting with staff, engineering and fire, and Zuvik had they were designing in accordance to the town specifications for a road and parking lot. And this is a driveway. It's not a road. So we can reduce that width a little bit more than what's shown on the plan, just to narrow that, that process area a bit, I think.
You're talking about narrowing it from 24 foot wide,
Yeah.
making it more driveway-like as opposed to roadway-like?
Yeah, as long as we can get the school buses in. I mean, I don't see this area being lined with school buses in and out constantly, but as long as a fire truck can get in and a school bus can get in with less than 24 feet, maybe we can get it down to 20. Yeah, I mean, we have Steve Sopolak here. He's a town engineer and director of community development also. He was also in on these meetings, so. If you have questions as far as that goes or other
Councilor Duff, yeah.
other issues, so.
The only question that I would have, because I think the parcels on the other side that are currently being farmed use the other entrance. But if we were to open up another piece, would we need to have any sort of wider clearance to get the equipment needed to work? For example, that one in the back right of the site that we saw, or is the 24 feet, I mean, is that sufficient?
Yeah, I really don't see that you're going to have major traffic in and out all day either, so, I mean, if you got to wait a couple seconds or pull to the side, 20 feet should be more than plenty. Typical lanes are 11 feet. You can go down to 10. Your car's about 7 feet wide. The larger piece of farm equipment, yeah, bigger. How much they're going to be going in and out of here, I really don't know. I'm not sure what a school bus is. I'd have to look that up. Any idea, Dan? On a bus width?
Probably like a fire truck, right?
Yeah, or a fire truck. But as I said, it's not going to be major traffic flow in and out. You might have a couple cars. I don't even know if you're going to have opposing traffic. If you have an event, they'll all come in at once, they'll all leave at once. I don't know if there'll be opposing traffic. And then to that egress, that'll be basically like probably a 12-foot driveway. It can go up to 13% by our standards in town. After that, it's pretty steep. So, and I think that could be done without as much fill. Just to throw that one out at you.
Any other questions, Ann?
I do. Thank you. And I echo what people have said. We totally changed things for you, and it's wonderful how you've dealt with it and kept going. A question in relating to what Brian had asked, parking on the shoulder for community gardens. I'm really happy to hear that there's almost no impervious surface, minimal.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if instead of just having people pull along the shoulders, which is going to get muddy and messy and disorganized, if there could be some kind of process, and maybe this is for engineering, or maybe this is further in details than we are right now, but some kind of process material so people can pull over and not make a mess and dig it up and whatever. I mean, would that be a consideration? That doesn't mean we'd be widening that road. It just means the shoulder would be somehow covered or,
Stabilized.
stabilized. There we go.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Sometimes what happens is the process is just held down a little bit lower, so a few inches of soil. So it wouldn't be nice grass, but it would be green. But when you drive on it, it's stable.
Okay, and then you could, I'm thinking of the Gilbert Farm where she's painted stripes for parking on dirt,
Yeah.
and on gravel. So we could do maybe something like that. That would work to keep the parking organized.
In the parking lot or
No, no, on the shoulder
shoulders?
where we have the garden.
Again, I don't think you're going to have a ton of people. At one time, town I live in, we have community gardens. In the spring, yeah, it's a little busier, but it's 4 or 5 cars, and they park on the side of the road. Some people with trucks will drive in through the little path to get to their garden. I don't foresee them parking in this parking lot just because you got to carry all your...
Shoulder.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
I'm being the devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the
Right.
worst possible. People pull in. We all have that feeling in a parking lot. Why did they take 1.5 spaces? Why didn't they just take... It's a thought, just to keep
Right.
it. I'm looking down the road 2 or 3 years or 4 years when it gets going and gets accepted and we have more traffic, we could have something
Yeah,
established.
That's an easy fix,
Yeah,
Paint-
okay.
painting
Well, I
the-
just was thinking about
putting
it.
the
Yeah, and
white
there,
lines
and there
down.
would be a contract. Anybody using the community garden or a section of the community garden, right, is under contract to live by the rules of the road, of the site. So I think that we even have in our materials, we do have a sample contract of how a community garden can be leased out and, that type of thing. So, yeah, that makes total sense. I had envisioned that it was going to be some process on that road. And, because you want to allow people to park next to their
Their lawn,
gardening.
yeah.
So,
And of course, comment. Just, there had been talk about farmer's market down here in the future. So there may be traffic coming and going both times, both directions, just to keep that in mind, how we want to keep that wide enough for that.
I think
Just a thought.
you could always widen it. I'm not sure your idea of narrowing it just a little more homey feeling or
A
something.
little more agricultural.
A little more agricultural, yeah. I mean, if it comes to that point, that's an easy to widen.
yeah, community gardening, farmer's market was a topic on the table. We don't want to lose sight of that. And that new open area would probably be ideal for
Yeah.
walking down on with tents and what have you. But, Ryan, any?
I know the first question at this time, and I think, we have a good start to a revised plan. Like we all said, we threw a lot of curveballs at you. But I think as we get more into the fine details, we can start, bringing some of the things up. And the bottom line, we have everything we can expand. Like I said, we can make the driveway wider, we can make the gardens bigger if we need to. So I think, we have it's a big piece of land here. We can expand in the future if the want is there.
Councilor Malaro, I can't see you. Do you have any additional questions?
No questions.
Okay, or comments? Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, good.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great job, yeah.
There he is.
There it is. Heard.
Hi, John Yike from Zuvik. I'm the environmental professional on the project. So I guess the first thing I'm going to say is we haven't updated our site design yet. We wanted to see what feedback the committee had tonight. We have, however, taken a good look at it, and we do feel this is something that we can definitely design and build and get pretty close to it. So we feel pretty strongly about that, so, which is great. So I don't have we don't have a site design to share with you tonight because we haven't updated it yet. I can go over the remediation, the proposed remediation if you like. I haven't gone over it with you guys yet, so I can do that if you'd like.
I think that makes sense, because we know there's some lead off of the house, and we know there's 2 wells, one we're reasonably sure that it is clean, and one we didn't know.
Okay, so I have a site plan up right now that shows there's 7 remediation areas. Is this up on your guys' screen, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay, so there's 7 areas where we've identified through the rounds of investigation we've completed that are going to require some remediation. The areas are impacted with either some sort of petroleum or lead or pesticides. So there's 6 relatively small areas. They're basically outlined. They're the little rectangles or the little squares. And they range in size from 5 to 12 cubic yards of material that we propose to remove. So they're relatively small. As you can see, there's one on the left side of the screen by AOC 5. There's some in the central portions of the site, and there's some up by New Britain Avenue. So 6 of the 7 areas, again, relatively small. 5 to 12 cubic yards of material will be excavated. It'll be disposed off-site properly. We'll collect confirmatory samples from the extent of the excavation. Granted, those confirmatory samples are below remedial criteria. We'll be done with the excavation in those areas because all the required contaminated soils will be removed. So that's those first 6 areas. The 7th area is the largest area. It's in the upper central portion of the screen that's surrounding the house. The house had a lot of lead-based paint on the outside of it. Not surprisingly, the lead got into the soil. So we have a remedial excavation that's basically around the house, and it goes down slope a bit to the south. So that's a larger area. Approximately about 300 cubic yards of soil is going to be excavated from that area and removed. Again, there's going to be confirmatory samples collected to confirm that we got all the necessary soils out of there. So these areas will be excavated, then they'll be backfilled with clean fill, and then the rest of the site redevelopment can go on after that. You mentioned the 2 wells. There is a dug well, which is just south of the house, the former house, and there's a drilled well to the west of the house. So we have sampled the well to the west of the house. All the results were below remedial criteria. We have not sampled the dug well because we found it later on in the process because, as you can guess, there was a lot of stuff out there hiding things. So the dug well is to remain at this time. The drilled well is going to be abandoned. The dug well, we might be able to incorporate that into, the open space concept. So, and also, the arsenic, there's arsenic in soils out there. We've determined that they are naturally occurring. This is common in Connecticut. So basically, there's our remedy for that is to just cover the areas where arsenic is in the shallow soil. There are some areas out here where the arsenic's in the deeper soil. There's overlying clean soil on top of it. So that central area that was on Peter's figure, that area is going to be covered during the site development. We just happen to have, the barn, the parking lot. There's going to be some roads over it already covering it. We're just going to have to add some more fill to that area. And we're going to be doing some cutting as it is, based upon the current plans, some cutting of material as it is, so we'll be able to redistribute that in the site. I think that's about it. Do you guys have any questions?
Sure. Councilor Duff?
And thank you for that overview. Just in terms of timeline, in terms of the amounts of excavation and backfill, you mentioned the 6 areas are between 5 and 12 cubic yards, and the one that's around 300. Is that a week, a day, a month? How long do you expect that to take?
To dig all those areas out, I would say, let's just say a week. I would say a week. We're either going to, you do have to get approval from the various disposal facilities. We'll either do that ahead of time by sampling the soils in situ, or they'll be stockpiled and then we'll sample it then. So there's a couple different ways to go about it, and that may be determined based upon, how the contractor wants to proceed, so.
And then just in terms of that process, risk to neighbors, I know there's people who live there, some residential around there. Any concerns there as far as when that material is being pulled up and remediated or stockpiled?
No, it's going to be stockpiled on poly and covered with poly, so I don't have any significant concerns over that. We do this often, so, and relatively speaking, this area is further away from residents than a lot of the other properties that we work at, so. And by the week time frame, that was more of, that's the time to get it out of the ground. We do have to do some sampling, wait for results on that. If the soil stockpile on site, sometimes we may have to wait a little. It may take longer to get the soil off site, but the actual week is to essentially dig it out.
Thank you very much.
Councilman Malaro?
I don't have any questions at the moment.
Sandy Kelly or
No, I'm all set now, thanks.
Fran Whalen?
How deep do you have to dig down excavation for some of this stuff?
I've proposed 2 feet. It's shallow. These are all shallow releases, so I've proposed 2 feet, and that's based upon the sampling we've done out there, and we've collected samples at depth, and they were clean, so.
Thank you.
That's
all I have. Thanks.
Yep.
Brian Clemens?
I have no questions, thank you.
Are we, to staff, are we sure we have to get rid of that dug well? We have the drilled well, but the shallow well or I guess maybe it was the first well. Is that something we want to get rid of? It can't be harnessed for the community garden? If it's clean? Anyway, it's just it's an open question in my mind. I'm assuming the other one is a drilled well. It has a pump at the bottom. It's not tapped into Mattabasset or MDC.
No, the drilled well is what he used to use for water for the house, so yes. Whether it's still operable, I'm not sure, but.
Right, but is the drilled well, is that connected to the public utility?
No, it is not.
No.
It's a well.
Yeah, it is a well, it is a well.
It's a well.
Its own well. Okay.
So you said the plan is to abandon the drilled well,
No, the dug well.
the dug well?
No, we were going to
Dug
keep,
well
our
remains.
thought
You're
was
gonna
that we were
keep
going
the
to
dug
keep the dug well, but abandon the drilled well.
Can you explain? Because usually you would think you would keep the well that has tested water that's good
Power,
for power, for a pump?
need a pump.
My understanding on the dug well anyway is to keep it as potentially, you could do something with it for aesthetic purposes and as part of the open space concepts. The drilled well, if it's not being used, it's better to abandon it and get rid of it. But if you guys have a potential use for it,
Just
we
my-
can definitely.
Can we temporarily cap it?
We can leave it the way it is. There is that
Or leave it.
cap over the top of
Leave
it.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
We had them put plates,
Yeah, the metal.
metal plates, so no one
We
could
saw- we
lift
saw
them and get
that.
in, yeah.
Yeah, but my suggestion is we hold on to it till we.
could.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's
it's
not
water
hurt-
for the site,
It's not hurting any-
Farmers that are leasing.
Correct, it's not hurting anyone, it's there, it's just getting power to it eventually. So, in the dug well, you saw that's just a square made of
Yeah.
stone, and it's not, wasn't very deep.
Sandy?
A question, could you define abandoning? I mean, what do you, if you abandon something, what do you do? It's there, you're not going to knock it down.
So what you would
You
do.
just secure it for safety?
Yes, basically you would remove any pumps, any equipment that's in the well, and you'd actually take and you'd grout it up from bottom to top so that it's not creating a potential pathway to the subsurface aquifer. So heaven forbid, let's say a gasoline truck rolls over on New Britain Avenue and it rolls down the hill and it starts leaking gasoline and somehow it gets down the well, then you could have a potential nightmare situation. The likelihood of it happening is very, very little, but it's just good to abandon it so there is no conduit to the subsurface aquifer.
Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, just another thing just popped in my mind as we were talking about there not being city service to that site. So was there like a septic tank and field that will be part of the remediation that'll get either capped or moved or not moved, but somehow dug up?
So the former owner did point to a location where he said the septic field was. We did sample in the septic field and we didn't find any contamination in there. I don't know how formal of a system it was. I can tell you that the pesticide shed used to serve as an outhouse. So I don't think they have it was a very formal system out there, but.
Yeah, and there's no record.
And there's no tank that's gonna.
There's no record of any, from the health district. They have no information.
And nothing was found in all the cleanup.
Huh.
Yeah.
All right.
Like John said, there was an old outhouse. So
Were there services and facilities inside the house?
I was only in once, I don't know.
A long time.
Yeah, there must have been wastewater disposal somewhere, and we sampled where we were told that it was, so.
Well,
I mean, that's not unusual for old farmhouses. They went to outhouses outside the house. They did not have, we were in there, and I have to admit, I don't think I remember seeing a bathroom area.
I think if anything, there's something in the basement, I recall. Bob, do you have a recollection?
Okay.
If there's something out there, we'll find it.
Yeah.
Don't step in it.
Bring your boots.
I think that probably wraps it up for us. I'm just glad the arsenic areas seem less than what we thought they were, so that's good. That's good news.
And I anticipate there'll be another meeting with staff, engineering, fire, to go over any revisions before it comes back again.
So Ray, right now, the way it stands with this latest presentation, round of presentations, our grant for $800,000, probably more than adequate to handle what we have to do, with the work we have to do to prepare the site going forward? Kinda hard.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. I mean, we're not taking any good soils off the site, and we're removing a minimal amount of soil, and the rest is kind of some cuts and pushing some stuff around.
And site work, engineering, design.
Yeah.
The grant's paying for all that,
Yep.
for engineering and design, testing, remedial action plan,
Yep.
and all the filings that we have to go through with DEEP that Zuvik is doing. So all that is coming out of the grant.
So we haven't overspent, we haven't over-designed beyond our means at this point.
No, we haven't. No.
And would the site plan also include things like landscaping, planting, or would that be separate?
That's separate from the grant. Unless it's all wrapped into the grant is a remedial action plan, which also included site work, site plan, barn, road, everything we're working on right now.
So things like rain gardens might be included, but if there are going to be other types of vegetation in those different demonstration fields, that might be something else we have to either fund or put on the roadmap.
I think it depends on, the costs that come in, and if there is remaining funding to do I'm not sure, but I think DECD would consider that part of the site planning, engineering portion of the grant.
Yeah, if it were stabilizing the site,
Yeah.
plantings that stabilize the site.
It's a
and
drainage.
the soil and the drainage and blah, 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 probably are considered, hopefully.
Site work.
Site work.
Planting vegetables.
No.
No.
No, but like different types of things that we might use for low maintenance native plants that we would want to, help make the site more presentable, I guess, to replace some of the stuff that we're taking down. I don't know if that'd be included or not. But
If there's enough in the budget, it would be all, we would push for it to be considered as site work.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else from staff to add?
I have nothing for this.
Oh, all right, then a motion to adjourn?
Unless you have questions.
And no questions of staff? I think we're good. I think we're good, Ray.
make a motion to adjourn.
Second? John seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.